And welcome into the early line. And there he is, Donnie right side, or whichever way you want to go. It doesn't make a difference on this Tuesday now after the holidays, since we are still since we're still trying to figure it out here. Donnie in for Ben Stevens. He is Donnie right side. You know the routine here, Donnie. No better way to start than, I guess, with the 7-7. Feels like old times here, man.
It feels like old times. Switch sides here, so I'm going to enjoy the co-pilot chair here. You'll be the pilot on the way, and so many things to get to today, which includes a wonderful college football playoff. If, Joe Ranieri, you are actually able to stay up for the second game.
Yeah, well, I was also up to watch the new year, unlike you, Donnie. I know that. I was definitely able to make it through the midnight hour to stay up and watch two of the best bowl games of the season, which is really what we ended up getting.
Yeah, it was really good games there. And also, if you take a look at the first game yesterday, Michigan and Alabama, sensational overtime victory. You want to talk about defense? You want to talk about putting pressure on the quarterback? Michigan was able to do that. And also, when you need clutch drives to be put together, J.J. McCarthy didn't do much in that football game, but boy, was he sensational when it absolutely counted. And Blake Corum, who didn't think he was going to score at least one touchdown, let alone get two touchdowns yesterday, Joe? A big-time performance by the Michigan Wolverines, who, by the way, closes a 2.5-point favorite here when the majority of the public seem to be lining up on those Alabama Crimson Tide.
There were not a lot of Roll Tide fans out there yesterday. There were, however, a ton of Washington Husky fans that were extremely excited based upon what they saw there yesterday. And I don't know about you, Donnie. I had them picked in the futures market to win it all. And so far, so good in that prediction here. How impressed were you with what you saw from the Huskies last night?
The one thing they had to be impressed by, too, is Dylan Johnson's a very good running back. 21 carries, 49 yards in that football game. But the pressure here was put on by the wide receivers here as we welcome in the radio audience. You're watching and listening live to the Early Line Tuesday morning edition as we recap the college football playoff right here. It's Donnie Rightside. It's Joe Ranieri, Sirius XM channel 159. You take a look at Odunze, 6 for 125, Polk 5 for 122, and Jalen McMillan 5 for 58, which included a touchdown. We thought this would be the offensive game, and we were not disappointed. 37 points for Washington, but it still came down to a red zone stand for those Washington Huskies playing defense at the right time here, along with getting some fantastic offense out of Michael Penix Jr. and those wide receivers.
Outstanding stuff there. Also, great NFL weekend. How about them Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson getting it done in a big way against the team that was trying to take that home field advantage from the Miami Dolphins? Didn't work out all that well for the Dolphins, did it?
No, it certainly didn't. 56-19, an absolute rout by the Baltimore Ravens. And I called this all week long, Joe. I wasn't sure why that line was only 3, and right up to game time, it held firm. I just thought to myself, the Miami Dolphins' big game is actually the Buffalo Bills, not the Baltimore Ravens. And what happens? You get a couple injuries to his shoulder. He says he's okay. Chubb now lost for the year with an ACL, and you still have to win next week in order to hold on to your division title here, which could give way to the Buffalo Bills. Lamar Jackson, what did he do there? Signed, sealed, and delivered in MVP.
Yeah, no, fantastic stuff there. And also you had the 49ers, right? Had to fly across country in a short week, taking on Washington. There was absolutely no reason to believe that the 49ers might not have a little bit of a let's spot, just win and you move on. But they did more than just win. They dominated once again.
Yeah, we thought that was going to be the case here. I actually thought the 49ers would be able to go through their team total, which in the low 30s weren't able to do that, but still an easy, convincing, and covering 27-10 finish there. The one thing that got a little bit interesting. Now, we'll talk a little bit later in the show. The Philadelphia Eagles were absolutely brutal on Sunday. They lose to the Cardinals. Why I'm bringing that up right now is if you watch early in that third quarter, Christian McCaffrey goes down with a calf injury. Now, he's going to have extra time to rest that up. Can you imagine the Philadelphia Eagles, which they did handle their business, or they should have handled their business, as I said, you actually would be getting the Rams game and maybe without McCaffrey for the 49ers. But now the 49ers will be resting. Maybe the Rams get in here. So a lot of dominoes to go down in that game. But Brock Purdy, nice bounce-back performance. Brandon Ayuk actually showed up on the road and had a big-time performance, something he typically saves for home here. Fully impressed with the 49ers. They are the best team in the NFC.
That they are. And you also, I hate to bring this up here, Donnie, but I'm going to anyway because it's
Yeah.
exactly what's on the screen. The Cardinals scored 29 points in the second half against, what's the name of that team again? Oh, yeah, your Philadelphia Eagles for the ultimate of ultimate meltdowns here over the weekend. Impressive stuff by the Cardinals. Absolute total dysfunction for the Eagles in that defense. What did you think?
Perfect offensive game plan for the Arizona Cardinals. If you watch this game, they handed off to James Conner time and time again, ran that play clock down the one, limited the possessions here. But you know what the biggest play of this football game was? And no, it wasn't the Arizona Cardinals scoring a touchdown late. It was actually the onside kick late in the game, which Jonathan Gannon explained, hey, look, I'm not kicking this football deep and having the Eagles get 3 or 4 first downs. There's no time on the clock. They kick a field goal to win it. We're going to kick it. Even if we don't get it, it sets up the Eagles around the 40-yard line. Let's see if we can hold them to a field goal and get the football back in our hands and continue to drive on the Eagles defense, which they gashed for the entire second half. That's exactly what they did. A dead football team, 2,500 miles away on New Year's Day, down double digits at the half, came back to beat the Eagles. Why? They can't get a stop when it matters. And it's one of those things they've been dealing with all season long, and it's finally coming home to roost.
Yeah, no, it's I can't believe my under 11.5 wins is still alive here, Donnie, in January. But yet here we are, still available there to cash that ticket. All right, New York Knicks cashed a few tickets here with their new look team. Big trade we learned about over the weekend. And then, of course, we saw what that looks like last night against the Timberwolves here. What did you think of what you saw there with this new look Knicks team?
Nice win here, and also some question marks starting to come up on the Timberwolves as they dropped to 10-7 away from home. But also Anthony Edwards chipped in with 35. But OG Anunoby coming over 17 points in that game for the Knicks. Julius Randle. How about this though, Joe? 39-9 at home in the Garden. The Knicks improved to 18-15. Look, we saw over social media over the weekend when that trade went down. There's a lot of people on polar opposite sides. Now we'll see if it works out either way. But you did have to make a change here. Maybe we're going to sign some guys in free agency in the summer. And Anunoby to the Knicks. Hey, look at that. Starts off with a dub.
Hey, listen, I love that they don't follow that same path, right? Keep doing the definition of insanity, the same thing and expecting a different result. Well, they opted to go in a different way, and it seems to be working out so far. The Utah Jazz, it's amazing what they can do when they're healthy in a big, big way there. They just trounced the Dallas Mavericks. But they've been doing that to a lot of teams here, Donnie, lately.
Yeah, how about that? I mean, great performance here, winning by over 30 points here. You take a look at 15-19 now, the Jazz, and also 10-5 at home, though. So at least they're handling their business on their home court. The Mavericks, they got to get that entire starting five healthy and playing together. Luka Doncic, 19, 14, and 6 just wasn't enough here. And we'll see what the Jazz have the rest of the way. But the Mavericks, we're not going to count them out yet. Let's see them healthy and happy here in the new year. Maybe they can get some dubs.
Yeah, they were smoked back in December 6th by this very same Dallas team when they were hurting. But, boy, payback is a you-know-what there, Donnie. Unreal. All right, 7-7 in the books. We got much more to get to here on the early line. Joe Renarian for Ben Stevens. Donnie right side. Come back and join us on the grid.
States to legalize sports betting and finally, quietly, legalizing the online portion. And that, of course, is Delaware.
Delaware offered parlay cards through their lottery for years.
Right.
And the local retailers didn't want to lose that money. They didn't want to lose the guys that were coming in to fill out those parlay cards. And, they're buying some beef jerky and chips on the way out of the store as well.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
favorite. I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm right in the 14.5.
And against the number as an underdog this year, meaning when they cover, they went out by
There's a very real chance that this Michigan season is the best chance they will have.
Oh, Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Am I just a side better now?
I'm right here on Saturday on College Football Today. It's bowl season, baby.
College Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This one was all Colts, 30-13. They win. They cover the one as the favorite. 41.5 just gets up and over.
And when Gardner Minshew plays okay, doesn't hurt his team, the Colts are in a lot of games. There are some games though he stinks it up and looks really bad. And, I don't know. They're just a tough team for me to figure out. I think like I said, I bet 5 Colts games this year and got all 5 of them wrong.
Football Full Circle, only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Musical chairs we're playing on the early line. That's the best way to start the new year. Just having fun, trying some new things out, and hanging around and talking some big-time college football. It's Donnie Rightside, Joe Ranieri, hour number 1 in full effect here. The Sugar Bowl was fantastic. Now, if I saw this right, Joe, 12:45 a.m. this game finished here. And what a wild game it was all the way through. 37-31 Washington, a furious comeback from the Texas Longhorns, falls just short. But before we get to the game itself, Joe, I know you were hot on the Washington Huskies, seemingly getting disrespected coming into this game. Now, I know Texas is really good. It's more of a regional shot there where Texas fans would be in there, and we understood that. But the one thing we know about Washington, this wasn't your father's Pac-12, like, oh, boy, easy schedule all the way through. They were battle-tested time and time again, and every time we thought, at least I thought, Oregon would get them, they couldn't get them. Washington showed up in that football game, was every bit as good as what we thought. Talking about the Huskies and the chances to win a championship, and why, Joe, you really like them coming into the college football playoff.
Well, I liked them because they were, unlike Alabama and Michigan, which I believe are two very similar teams. They beat teams the same way. They're very defensive oriented. They have good running games. They can suffocate you. Texas also extremely good at, putting the foot on the gas and blowing teams out. The only team that it doesn't matter what the score is, they are never going to be out of the game is Washington because of the play calling by Kalen DeBoer, because the defense is an elite. No, but you know what they do, Donnie, and they did it again last night, is when they needed to get stops, they got stops. How was the passing game with Quinn Ewers last night? The entire second half of the telecast, Donnie, we had to keep seeing the Manning kid warming up with his helmet on as if he was getting ready to come in. Why? Because Quinn Ewers couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. They had no passing game. And when you go up against a team like Penix and Washington that can throw you out of the building, that's exactly what they ended up doing. Exactly what I thought was going to happen. Great defense against the run, Texas. Not so great against the pass. And that was just not the right matchup for the Texas Longhorns last night, and it showed.
If you never saw Michael Penix play football here before even coming to Washington, the minute he jumps on the screen and drops back with that left hand absolute laser beam that he has, you're impressed right off the bat. So many times, Joe, we talk about in college football, like who has the best group of wide receivers, usually always settle on Ohio State. Washington has a trio that might go down as one of the best of all time, can hit you at every angle. Penix threw for 430 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. But obviously, you need some guys to help you out there. Odunze, Polk, McMillan. And by the way, McMillan, who was injured for most of the year, had a big-time Pac-12 championship game and then comes in and still chips in with 5 for 58 and a touchdown. But Odunze, I don't know how you cover the guy. 6 for 125, made a fantastic 52-yard catch earlier in that game. Polk, 5 for 122, also with a touchdown catch, which included a 77-yard pass here. The one thing that I love about them is you're right. They're never out of the game with those weapons. The one thing, though, I do feel bad about late in that football game, if you're watching, and it was a really bad break as it was, you're just trying to run the clock out, and you see going up the middle, Dylan Johnson gets tackled low, looks like an ankle injury, maybe a knee injury as he went down. That stopped the clock here for him, but also that's going to play into something when we talk about them going against Michigan in just a little bit. But looking at Washington, you want to talk about being battle-tested. They were throughout that season, but also that final last drive to show up. You had 3 or 4 plays from inside the 20-yard line for Texas, and you stopped every single one of those here. It wasn't that the Longhorns were a bad team, weren't in this ballgame, but Washington from start to finish for me, just a better ball club, and boy, do they look good on offense.
Not even close, Donnie. It really was. They dominated that game from the start to the end there. And when they needed a big play, and that may have been the greatest game I have seen Michael Penix Jr., and he's had a bunch of them this year, and actually throughout his college career, even when he was at Indiana. That was the most impressive showing of that we've ever seen. I mean, he was dialed in, utilized every weapon. I mean, there had to be at least a half a dozen guys with at least 30 or more, yards receiving in that game. He utilized everybody. When he needed to make a throw, he made a throw. But I'll go back to this. That defense, which everyone kept pointing to and saying they're not good enough. Well, they are good enough. They are scrappy enough to be able to get just enough stops to do, you know what? Get the ball back to their quarterback, who then creates distance on the scoreboard between you and them, and then all of a sudden you're playing catch up instead of trying to run away, and Texas just was not ready for that. The third quarter was over to me, Donnie, because Texas had the ball for 2.5 minutes? That was it. They didn't have the ball for the entire third quarter. They couldn't get off the field. That's why Washington is so dangerous for Michigan as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun matchup, too, because, we took a look at that first game, which we're going to get to that in detail in the next segment. But Alabama-Michigan is supposed to be that slow clock-burning game, controlling the ground game, who's going to play good defense. And we got that for the majority of the game. It actually went over only because that game went to overtime. This game, we knew coming into it, these two teams are going to trade punches. Each got a touchdown in the first quarter. Each got 2 touchdowns in the second quarter. And then Washington pulled away in the third quarter with a 10-0 there and then held on late in that football game. And quite frankly, again, it was a bad break. It probably shouldn't have been that close. And Texas should not even have been in the position they were had it not been for that injury for Washington, which forces the timeout on an injury on your own side. But so impressive here. This is what we talk about Michael Penix heading towards the Heisman Trophy and with the legitimate chance to win that. He's been fantastic all season long. It's just a shame that he didn't get a little bit more hype because some of those games midway, they really didn't have to lean on him all that much. But now you're seeing Pac-12 championship game going up against Texas in the biggest games. He's certainly been able to perform. And also now moving forward towards Michigan to see how they handled it. The one thing we saw from Michigan yesterday was a great pass rush. But, Joe, you have one of the best offensive lines in the country here with the Washington Huskies.
That's exactly correct here. I mean, we saw in the difference in both games, right? Alabama could not keep Michigan off of Milroe. Texas couldn't even sniff Penix. And then when they did get close, they had no answer for his legs, too, which was also extremely impressive. He didn't chuck it up. He didn't make the bad mistakes. He made all the right reads. He was seeing the field unbelievably. And you got to give credit to that O-line there. That O-line kept him clean. They gave him running lanes if he chose to do so. And no matter what Texas threw at him defensively, the offensive line made all the right reads, including the running backs, by the way, which were fantastic in picking up blitzing linebackers and cornerbacks. It was an all-around great game, one that we should not be surprised at, Donnie, because that's the style Washington's been playing all year long. I think people are finally starting to wake up to it.
Yeah, 14-0 now, the Washington Huskies on the season. And again, not skimping through their schedule, going toe-to-toe with some of the heavyweights in college football, which you saw Oregon pick up a Fiesta Bowl win. That's a team that Washington beat twice in the regular season. So certainly, most of us saw that coming. And also, the offense that we know is so tough, Joe. 532 yards yesterday. Now, typically, what do you see in that first bowl game? You get a little bit of nerves out of the players. You're on a neutral site here. You haven't played for 3 weeks. It looked like, Joe, they didn't miss a beat yesterday. Fantastic stuff. Quickly on the Texas Longhorns. They still got close to 500 yards of offense here, but if you lose the turnover battle, chances are you're going to lose the game. Yep. They had 2 turnovers. Washington Huskies only had 1, but all the way through, this was a fantastic battle, Joe, that certainly lived up to the hype.
No, it did, and it was a fantastic game. Both games actually went over. We'll talk about that next game here, but it was a firefight. But again, I don't want to get into a firefight with Washington. Texas had no choice, Donnie, because they kept turning the ball over, and Washington was able to capitalize. And, oh, yeah, time of possession, too, was pretty one-sided for 3 quarters there with Washington. They outplayed them, and they outmuscled them, not something we're used to talking about with Pac-12 teams.
No, we're not. Next, we're going to preview, or going to go over the postgame there of the Rose Bowl. And also, I'm going to get a little bit angry in this segment, Joe, because the one thing that comes around once every year that I get angry with, the commercials. My goodness, ESPN, did we need that many? I mean, mixing a little football with your commercials here, but that doesn't take away with an unbelievable victory from the Michigan Wolverines. It's the early line. We're going to hit the Rose Bowl next. Don't go anywhere.
States to legalize sports betting and finally, quietly, legalizing the online portion. And that, of course, is Delaware.
Delaware offered parlay cards through their lottery for years. And the local retailers didn't want to lose that money. They didn't want to lose the guys that were coming in to fill out those parlay cards. And, they're buying some beef jerky and chips on the way out of the store as well.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
favorite. I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm right in the 14.5. And against the number as an underdog this year, meaning when they cover, they went out by beat. There's a very real chance that this Michigan season is the best chance they will have.
Oh, Rocky Top, Tennessee.
So, am I just a side better now? I'm right here on Saturday on College Football Today. It's bowl season, baby.
College Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This one was all Colts, 30-13. They win. They cover the 1 as the favorite. 41.5 just gets up and over.
And when Gardner Minshew plays okay, doesn't hurt his team, the Colts are in a lot of games. Some games though he stinks it up and looks really bad. And, I don't know. They're just a tough team for me to figure out. I think I bet 5 Colts games this year and got all 5 of them wrong.
Football Full Circle, only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game
until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's time to talk about the granddaddy of them all. Yes, that is the Rose Bowl. And some say, Joe Ranieri, that's the best time slot in all of sports, New Year's Day at 5 p.m. Eastern. And it certainly, people, did not disappoint yesterday. The Michigan Wolverines 27, the Alabama Crimson Tide 20. And this game had a couple really interesting feels all the way through. But before we get there, if we go back to a little bit of Florida State hate here for us. So when we're sitting back watching the College Football Playoff Committee make their final decisions, Joe, I sat on the Pro Football Today desk as it came down saying, please, just keep Florida State out, Joe, and we were going to have a sensational college football playoff. We just talked about the Sugar Bowl, absolutely delivered, the Rose Bowl as well. But talk to me about this. Heading into this game from Michigan and Alabama, the opening line was 1.5 as a favorite towards Michigan. The initial thought process for me within 12 hours of seeing that was like, I bet Alabama's going to close as a favorite in this game. Weeks go by, no change. Yesterday, yeah, we did see a change. Michigan went from 1.5 to 2.5. What did you think about that line movement?
Well, it wasn't public money. I'll tell you that, because the majority of the tickets all throughout the process were on Alabama. And listen, it makes sense. The public is going to side with Nick Saban, who is notorious in these spots, while Harbaugh in Michigan, this was the first game in which they were able to get over the hump here and actually give themselves a chance at a national championship here. So I get it. The public loved Alabama, but they didn't love them enough to move the needle. The needle was being moved late, and you're right. It was all Michigan big money that came in there saying, hey, Big Blue here is going to get it done. Now, ultimately, I thought this was the coin flip of all coin flip games during this bowl season. And really, Donnie, this proved to be an absolute coin flip one way or the other. And the market was right to have it just as a pick 'em price, which is really what it was.
Yeah, like, again, early on, I'm like, oh, my goodness, this is going to be really interesting to watch this play out. And the meaning where I was saying that was because it's like, oh, I think, Alabama's the better team, and I think they're going to win this football game. And we even saw it at that when they actually announced the teams were going to make it in. They showed the Michigan room as who they were going to play. The big A showed up on the screen. It's like, ooh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, a couple golf claps in like the back of the room saying, let's get ready to party in the Rose Bowl. But I was so impressed by Michigan. Let's go over this game, too. How about the start here? Right away, you look at Michigan. J.J. McCarthy is one of those guys, more of the game manager, but fills that role perfectly for the Michigan Wolverines. Do you know what I was so impressed with here? He throws that interception on the third play of the game, and what am I saying to myself, Joe? This is going to be an absolute blowout. We knew that this quarterback couldn't hold up. What did you think when he threw that interception before you even saw that it was going to be overturned?
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. I had to question marks about both guys here. But the one thing I can say, Donnie, is that having watched both of these quarterbacks throughout the season, right? And I don't know if you know, they did a piece on this during the broadcast last night about how McCarthy, he meditates now. He wasn't in a good headspace for a while. He figured that out. There is a certain level of calmness with this kid in big moments, and we've seen it now all year long. Starting the Ohio State game, every big game, there is just this very calm feeling and demeanor over him in which he goes, hey, you know what? No moment is too big. Like Milrose his eyeballs started to get very big at points late in that game yesterday, especially when they were down. And listen, he's had nothing but success over the season, right? I mean, the only reason they were in this game is because of Milrose's ability to rise to the occasion against Auburn in the Iron Bowl. And we all remember that. We're all scratching our heads going, how in the world did he complete that pass? But we noticed it yesterday, that level of calmness with McCarthy versus Milroe started to look like that deer caught in the headlights late in this game, Donnie. And ultimately, it was Michigan who went about their business with their leader, J.J. McCarthy, kept everybody nice and cool, nice and even, and it got the job done when it mattered the most. And Milroe, unfortunately, was a play short.
He was a play short. And yesterday, I actually thought he was going to throw for at least one touchdown pass and be effective in the passing game, Joe. He certainly wasn't. 16 of 23 for 116, no touchdowns and no interceptions. And also on the ground, 21 carries for 63 yards. Now, granted, we know it wasn't 21 total carries in the game because they count sacks as rushes as well. He was effective on the ground with not taking those big sacks. But the thing I couldn't be more impressed was you line up in the biggest of situations. Nick Saban's got 3 weeks to prepare for you. You had a terrible start to the football game, which also included getting down 7-0 on that McClellan blast for about 30 yards up the middle. It's like, oh, boy, here we go. Michigan not built from playing from behind, even if it is 7-0. They're not used to being in this situation all that much. I was so impressed of how they stuck to the game plan. Blake Corum, 19 carries, 83 yards, a touchdown on the ground, and a touchdown receiving wise. That was one of the guys where you see coming in, like, come on, minus 210, minus 220, minus 240, depending on where you're shopping at. But you knew he was going to score a touchdown, and he did it both ways here. I just loved how McCarthy settled in, and in the biggest moments here, you're down 7 points, you got to drive the length of the field, which included an absolute fantastic play call on 4th and 2, which got that big play down the sideline to Corum here. I loved what I saw from Michigan. You want to talk about Harbaugh having a team that's buying in at every situation? They could have tucked tail early in that football game, and they were sensational, particularly on defense for me, Joe.
They were everything we thought they were. And, you know, the big thing with Michigan all year long has been schedule. And outside of really Ohio State, who's really tested them, who's really been able to go toe-to-toe with them. We knew Alabama would be a huge test for Michigan. We also knew that if they were able to get past Alabama, then the winner of the Washington-Texas game was going to be an interesting matchup for them. But you got past Ohio State. Now you got past the SEC, which has kind of dominated the Big Ten here. And now you get the Pac-12 coming up. So every obstacle and every test Michigan has had, they have passed this year, and they have passed with flying colors, and they have overcome adversity, which in years past with Harbaugh, his teams haven't been able to do that. They are doing it in a big way this year.
No, they certainly are. And again, this is what I love, too, about this. I hated Michigan the entire season, Joe. When I talk about not like in the football team itself, just the way they went about it, they still talk about, the adversity that we went through. It was self-inflicted adversity. It wasn't like anybody came in and said, hey, Jim Harbaugh, you just can't coach these games. No, you were doing things you weren't supposed to do, multiple suspensions for your coach. And that's where I started to root against him. But also, let's not forget about this. Through the first 10 weeks of the season, they didn't play a single opponent worthy of anything here. No ranked opponents. They finally go into Penn State, handle their business. They go into the game, handle their business. Then all of a sudden you're taking yourself and say, okay, now you're really going to have to step up. And I sort of got a little bit of a chuckle when we saw the College Football Playoff Committee put Alabama in at 4, knowing Michigan was 1. Like, oh, man, I wish we would have matched up against anybody else except for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And the Crimson Tide coming in, beating Georgia, who we saw. Now, granted, I don't care what Florida State team was out there, but for the majority of the second half, toe-to-toe, the freshmen were beating down Florida State, which shows you the depth and how good Georgia actually was. So then you're having those self-doubts about Michigan and how good are they actually? Is the Big Ten just bad and they rolled through and will an SEC team just come in and power it away? Love the fact that they scored that late touchdown, then go right down the field in overtime to get that touchdown as well. But also, tell me about this, though. The final play call for the Alabama Crimson Tide in this game, the quarterback draw up the middle. Now, hear me out, Joe. Again, we're not defensive coordinators, but we're avid football fans and we watch a lot. Was there any guess it was going to be a quarterback draw when you go shotgun 5 wide? Michigan knew it, blitzed appropriately, and just shut that play down from the beginning. I just wish we had a little bit more creativity, maybe a read option, maybe getting the quarterback out on the perimeter. That usually works well, run a little rub routes on the outside. Were you surprised they went quarterback draw in the biggest spot, or you just said, hey, I'm going to let my best athlete see if he could just get in the end zone here?
No, I thought that was a terrible play call because, like you said, Donnie, if you and me and even the broadcaster and everyone watching that game knew what was coming, then I'm pretty sure Harbaugh and the defense of Michigan also were going to be in a position where anybody but Milroe. I don't care what happens here. Milroe is not beating us up the gut because he had done a really good job of that throughout the game. But you know what happens when you shorten the field, you get inside that 5-yard line, right? All of a sudden, that's a lot of bodies all bunched up there in a very short part of the field. And now you think you're going to squeeze through and push that defensive front of Michigan so Milroe can get in. Listen, that works against Baylor. That might work, against some of the lesser teams there, Mississippi State. It's not going to work against that Michigan front. I would have loved to have seen some sort of fake that and pull up and pass, maybe a jump pass, anything creative that you had saved for that moment in the game, which we have seen in years past, obviously, in these spots with Saban, but they went just too conventional. And yet another, what was with the snap? Like, what was going on with the center in Milroe? Like, I mean, if he was a catcher, I would have benched him in the third inning. Like, are you kidding me? Catch the damn ball. I don't care where it's thrown. Catch the ball. It's your first priority. That's what I mean when the deer in the headlights look. That's what Milroe was looking like with this Michigan defense coming after him the entire game.
Yeah, low, high, left, right, just kept him on his toes. And as a quarterback, when you're playing a good defense, the last thing you want to worry about is like, ooh, where's this snap actually going to come? But you have to have that extra concentration, which might bring your eyes down from the pass rush. If you would have told me before this game, Joe, Alabama, 172 yards on the ground rushing, I would have said, what is that final score? 45-14, because apparently they're going to be able to make plays in the passing game as well. They weren't able to do that. Maybe the more disappointing thing for me from an Alabama perspective was the outside wide receivers, Isaiah Bond and Jermaine Burton. We never got that super big play that we needed to get from them. A down the field toss, it just didn't happen. But credit the Michigan Wolverines. So shaky to start that game, dropping punts out there, throwing early interceptions, getting overturned. They won it. Let's preview the national championship game for next week right here on Early Live.
One of the first states to legalize sports betting, and finally, quietly, legalizing the online portion. And that, of course, is Delaware.
Delaware offered parlay cards through their lottery for years. And the local retailers didn't want to lose that money. They didn't want to lose the guys that were coming in to fill out those parlay cards. And, they're buying some beef jerky and chips on the way out of the store as well.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
favorite. I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm laying the 14.5. And against the number as an underdog this year, meaning when they cover, they went out by. There's a very real chance that this Michigan season is the best chance they will have.
Oh, Rocky Top, Tennessee.
So, am I just a side better now? I'm right here on Saturday on College Football Today. It's bowl season, baby.
College Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This one was all Colts, 30-13. They win. They cover the one as the favorite. 41.5 just gets up and over.
And when Gardner Minshew plays okay, doesn't hurt his team, the Colts are in a lot of games. Some games though he stinks it up and looks really bad. And, I don't know. They're just a tough team for me to figure out. I think I've had 5 Colts games this year and got all 5 of them wrong.
Football Full Circle, only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. and now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
National Championship Week. Yeah, basically it is already upon us because it's a Tuesday. Next Monday night, they will play for it all. And that's going to be the Washington Huskies and the Michigan Wolverines. That's going to be live from Houston in a dome, fast track. So if you're saying Michigan, they can win anywhere, right? We get that. But Washington on a fast track in a dome, we're going to have pristine passing conditions. Should that help them? If we're lining this football game up at the FanDuel Sportsbook, Joe, we see a 4.5-point favorite early for the Michigan Wolverines and a total listed at 55.5. We'll go over some of the details in this game. But your first look, Joe, when you got eyes on that line, what did you think here?
Well, the early, which is interesting too, right? So the early look, I believe, was 6.5 here with Michigan before Washington played a snap there against Texas. So it was already we were looking at Washington being, disrespected. So they were, they were a 4.5 point opening dog here, right, in their game against Texas. And then basically what we had seen before kickoff was the fact that, they were going to be about a 6.5, maybe even a touchdown underdog against either Alabama or Michigan. Now, obviously, people saw what we saw, what we knew Washington was capable of, and now it's down to a little more reasonable number. But once again, to me, these teams are separated by a field goal. The top 4 teams were all much closer than the market gave them to be here. So I think this is going to be fascinating to watch, Donnie, as the week moves on. Where does this line move to? Does the Washington money come in throughout the week here, inching them a little bit closer? Or does Michigan money, which it always does and always will, it'll flood the marketplace, man, maybe creating even more value, I think, on this Washington Huskies team.
I don't know you can't do this, but we're always going to analyze every single angle, right? So you take a look at yesterday. It was determined as the top 2 teams because you're basing the price points here on who's going to win the championship. It was Alabama and it was Michigan. Yes. So you figure Michigan beats Alabama. They certainly should be the favorite. And I do agree they should be the favorite here going up against the Washington Huskies. Not to say the Huskies can't win this football game, but when you're trying to boil it down and say, okay, Alabama did lose to Texas by double digits. Texas just lost to Washington. And I know it's like 6 degrees of separation on how you get there, but it does maybe give a little bit of feather in the cap for Washington heading into this football game. Certainly they're not going to be scared. We're not going to be able to beat almighty Michigan. No, this team's 14-0. And if you line both of these offenses up here, each averaging around 36 points per game coming into it. Now, the advantage, of course, is going to be Michigan's defense, who I do think is better than Washington's overall, but also, what did you see that Alabama couldn't do yesterday in the game was have a quarterback stand in the pocket and deliver to his wide receivers. Michael Penix doesn't care about your pass rush. Michael Penix doesn't say, I've never played in a big game. No, he's played in a ton of big games. Michael Penix isn't a true freshman or a redshirt freshman, Joe, going through the motions. You're like, man, this is just a lot of fun to be here. This is the final stand for a Heisman Trophy finalist with an undefeated team in a dome, as I said, with 3 of the best wide receivers in the country on his own team. He should be able to deliver. But my question to you coming into this here is the first thoughts, that Washington offense versus the Michigan defense. Can they overpower Michigan's defense, which quite frankly hasn't been overpowered all year here, Joe?
Yeah, no. So they are very similar to some of the old Tom Brady teams where they have better weapons at receiver, where they can utilize, and especially with the Johnson injury there. Are you going to run down the throat of Michigan? Well, no. But actually, Texas that defense was rated higher against the run than Michigan's defense was this year. They were elite against the run all season long, and they still managed to stuff it down their throat when they needed to. I think what you're going to see is not Penix dropping back 5-6 steps and just having all day, because Michigan's not going to allow them to do that. But they have so many weapons there. Michigan is going to have to pick their poison, right? You're either not letting a couple of the guys beat you deep, right? Receivers, you're not going to let them, you don't care if Penix runs on you, but you're not going to let them dump the ball off with those quick passes. They are going to have to figure out what are you okay with them doing, because you can't stop it all. I do think you're going to see a lot of quick passing out of his hands, the ability to use the short passing game as the running game, which I think will be very effective here against this Michigan defense, which sometimes over pursues, so to speak, there, especially against a quarterback that they know can beat them, not just with the arm, but with his legs as well.
You take a look at the game, too, and the FanDuel Sportsbook very quick this morning, Joe, with already getting the prop bets out for next Monday night's action here. When you take a look at the quarterback props here, just the passing ones, J.J. McCarthy, 190.5. Michael Penix Jr., 297.5, so over 100 yards difference, which is interesting to me. So I look at that and say, okay, if Washington is down Dylan Johnson, who's not effective, they're going to have to throw the football probably 45 to 50 times. You'll take some sacks, you'll probably get some interceptions, but you're going to have to throw your way in this ball game. But if I'm taking a look at J.J. McCarthy, and if I do believe Washington can score on anybody, which, Joe, I think they can, I think J.J. McCarthy is going to have to throw for more than 190 yards. I don't think this is going to be a ground and pound attack and try to wait out Washington. There's a really good shot. And again, we're not dealing with a total 44.5, 45.5 that we're looking at in the Rose Bowl. We're in the mid-50s now here. So my attention goes to, do I think Penix can get those yards? Absolutely. But I'm looking at J.J. McCarthy going like, he better get at least 190 passing yards, Joe.
Yeah, well, he's going to have to. Interesting. I think also what you noticed in that game there was, with Michigan and Alabama, is the pace of play, right? Both teams decided, like Milroe, his biggest weapon is he could beat you with a 70-yard bomb at any point. They didn't allow that. They did not allow the big play to beat them. And then on offense, if you noticed, up until that last play where they had to, that last possession in which they had to score, otherwise they were going to lose, it was crawl city here. The fact that that game went over was only because of overtime, but, you know, the defense would not allow the big play here. Okay, if you're going to do that in this game, Washington has shown you they can go up-tempo or they can slow it down to a crawl and keep moving the chains, which, again, is not great for a team that is trying to come back. So I'm wondering, is Michigan going to try and speed up the tempo here a little bit to kind of balance things out? Because if you're going at a snail's pace, which we saw them do, and Harbaugh loves to slow it down to a crawl, okay, that's great as long as it's a one-score game. But what happens if it's not a one-score game? What are you going to do then? And I think it's going to be very unlikely that they are just going to play drop the clock to one and run a play. I think they have to go up tempo. I think they should be playing from in front if they give themselves the best chance here. You can't do that by playing on a crawl space. You just can't.
Yeah, we'll get to some of those wide receiver props in just a moment here, but it never fails. Like, if you thought that Blake Corum heading into that Alabama game was like, well, he does score every game, but he is expensive, at least over 2-1. Blake Corum coming into this football game, anytime touchdown scoring market at the FanDuel Sportsbook, a minus 350 price in this game. Next guy closest is Rome Odunze, the wide receiver for the Huskies, at minus 130 to looks like Rodgers plus 100. I do believe that's the backup running back that we figure probably will be coming in here for Dylan Johnson. But it is interesting to see that we do think he's going to score, and I guess price is in the eye of the beholder there, how much you're willing to pay. If you figure in a higher scoring game, he's probably going to get one. But let's take a look here at the rushing yards. One of those things where we saw in that low 80s, high 70s number, depending on where you're shopping at, for Blake Corum, listed in this game, 98.5 yards as a rushing prop for Blake Corum. We know he's going to be the focal point of this offense in this game. If you're looking at that to get to the center, I mean, what's the parlay here? He's got to get 100 yards in a touchdown. You barely make your money back. We're looking for a big game out of Corum, obviously, based on these FanDuel numbers here, Joe.
Yeah, well, Washington's defense kind of bend but don't break, right? They also have shown the ability to adjust in game better than most, Donnie, I thought. And because we all know, listen, Texas was able to run the ball pretty easily last night on that Washington defense, right? Because they made a decision and said, all right, you're not going to beat us deep, right? You're not going to beat us at our own game here. So go ahead and run it 8 yards, 10 yards. Go ahead and do that. I do think that's going to be very similar. I think they will bend but not break, so to speak, for the big plays with McCarthy going over top. I think Corum will have some success running. Everybody has had some success running on Washington. But the problem of the matter is it's not enough because defensively they can't go toe-to-toe with Washington's offense and Penix. So I do believe Corum is poised to have a big game here. But that doesn't mean big game getting into the end zone multiple times. It just means they're going to be able to chew up some yards on the ground here against this defense.
Yeah, take a look at Michigan's wide receivers. You are getting a bit of a discount here because we figure it's going to be a lot of ground and pound for them moving the football. Cornelius Johnson, 35.5. You take a look at Roman Wilson, 41.5. And then Colston Loveland, the tight end for Michigan, at 36.5. No surprise here from a Washington perspective, Joe. Roma Dunze, 95.5 yards. Jalen McMillan, 66.5. And Jalen Polk, 55.5. Now, let me ask you this question because we have a week to play with this. And again, the bets are going to come in later and later in the week as the public starts to say, oh, yeah, that's right. There's a Monday night championship game. If this line sits at the FanDuel Sportsbook right now at 4.5, in your mind, where does this line end up? Does it go to 3? Does it drop to 3.5? Does it increase higher? Where's that money going to come in late in the week to push that number around?
I think it's going to be fascinating, but I would Michigan backers right now are probably looking at this and going, do we really? Washington plays in nothing but one-score games, and they win them. So if you are believing that Michigan is more than capable of beating the Huskies, which they are, we know that, then you probably are comfortable putting, laying that 4.5, maybe even 5. I do think it stays under the 6.5, the look-ahead line here. The question is, at what point does it get there? Because Michigan money is always going to flood the market late. It's just going to be, I think it's going to be telling as far as what do Michigan backers, how confident are you in them being able to win by margin in this game against a team that never wins or loses by margin here. They usually, in tight games, figure out a way, Donnie, to win, whether it be by 3, 4, 5, 2. Every big game Washington has had, it's been a one-score game, and they win them because they come through. That's a lot of experience with Washington. I'm curious to see what happens when the limits get bigger. What the Michigan backers, how confident are they with laying such an odd number at 4.5 or 5 right now?
It's going to be fun to watch it play out, too, because I think that 4.5 does sit right here. I actually would be surprised if this number got around that 3.5 range. I think it's right here. If I had to guess right now, I would think the late money probably would come in on Washington, if I'm being honest on that, pushing that number a little bit lower than it would be higher. The reason I say that is Washington, to me, and I know it's a national championship game. They're 14-0. They won the Pac-12. They are an awesome football team. But to me, it feels like Washington, Joe, is blowout proof, if that makes sense. Like if they're down 14 points in the fourth quarter, you're not saying that this team's not built to come back. Like they have you could probably say the best overall quarterback, pure quarterback from the pocket in football, and 3 unbelievable wide receivers. So if you're down in this game, Washington can come back. Always the question mark is, can the Michigan Wolverines come back if they're down by a certain margin here? It should be a lot of fun, and certainly it's only Tuesday. We got till next Monday to sort of beat this game around the bush, but it's nice to see the FanDuel Sportsbook up with a lot of prop bets already to sort of digest and get us ready. And also, if I saw this correctly, Joe, did we win by having a 7:30 kickoff here on Monday night? Did they actually learn their lesson in college football not to put that bad boy on at 9 o'clock? Well, there's enough to get angry about. But you know, we're going next to the ice. I know Joe Ranieri loves a good ice hockey game. We'll talk about one next.
One of the first states to legalize sports betting, and finally, quietly, legalizing the online portion, and that, of course, is Delaware.
Delaware offered parlay cards through their lottery for years. And the local retailers didn't want to lose that money. They didn't want to lose the guys that were coming in to fill out those parlay cards, and they're buying some beef jerky and chips on the way out of the store as well.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't
favorite.
care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm laying the 14.5. And against the number as an underdog this year, meaning when they cover, they went out by beat. There's a very real chance that this Michigan season is the best chance they will have.
Oh, Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Am I just a side better now? I'm right here on Saturday on College Football Today. It's bowl season, baby.
College Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This one was all Colts, 30-13. They win. They cover the one as the favorite. 41.5 just gets up and over.
And when Gardner Minshew plays okay, doesn't hurt his team, the Colts are in a lot of games. Some games though he stinks it up and looks really bad. And, I don't know. They're just a tough team for me to figure out. I think I've had 5 Colts games this year and got all 5 of them wrong.
Football Full Circle, only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We got some hockey action over the weekend. Yes, if you're watching college football, college basketball, the NFL, the NHL still holding down New Year's Day with their outdoor series. This time, Joe Ranieri, up in the great state of Washington. Seattle was the place to be. The Kraken with a 3-0 victory here over the Golden Knights. They now improved to 15-14 on the season. The Golden Knights 22-11. T-Mobile was the place to be yesterday. I always enjoy the pageantry of this game, and if not just for, hey, you know what? You got to tune in for a couple minutes just to see the layout here, how many people are there, and what that stadium actually looks like. But a pretty good performance out of the Kraken there, no doubt about it.
Very. In fact, I believe the first shutout in the history of this of the Winter Classic here. Usually, most of them are kind of crazy shootouts, high scoring. This was not, because Vegas, well, they didn't show up here, Donnie, in any way, shape, or form. So kudos to Seattle and the 50,000 people that showed up there with the roof open to enjoy some hockey.
Yeah, it was pretty good to actually watch it play out there. A goal in each period here, Joe. One in the first, one in the second, and one in the third. Looks like Tolvanen, if I have that correct here, a goal and an assist and a +2. And then we take a look at DeCourt with 35 saves for the shutout. Did I do good pronouncing those names for you here, Joe?
That was impressive, actually. And Seattle finally starting to play the kind of hockey we thought they'd be playing all season long, but it better late than never, I guess, here at this point, Donnie.
Yeah, there we go. Some nice hockey talk to end hour number 1 here. And certainly when we get into hour number 2, we got a lot to go over. And if you thought that maybe it was a little bit cold to play golf here, not the case. Why, Joe? They're playing out in the beautiful state of Hawaii for the Century. We got some interesting information coming up on that game as well, but also taking a look at where the NFL goes here, heading into week number 18. So much up for grabs. And if you see behind me, there is a Super Bowl trophy. There's a lot of Eagles paraphernalia. This was not a very good New Year's in the Donnie Wright side household because once we're high hopes seemingly dashed. Hour number 2 is coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We're right here on the Sports Grid Network.